Come and join us for our weekly Pet Connection show.
Sit down with us, relax, and don't forget your pet journals.
Please stay with us for lively and informative conversation about pets.
Good morning, pet appreciators. Good morning, Twin Cities. I hope you're all on the right time frame now. So it seems like we all lost an hour of sleep. So good morning, everybody.
Yes, it was definitely hard to wake up this morning.
Thank God cell phones automatically update times.
And my cats remember that they need to be fed at a certain hour, so that was helpful as well.
Oh, that's good, yeah. I was totally surprised at the time. So I'm just grateful that I got here. So anyways, good morning, pet appreciators. And I hope you're surviving your loss of sleep, but just think in 6 months you will be able to gain it back.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Absolutely. But you know what? Loss of sleep is not the only thing that we're going to be talking about here on the Pet Connection Show. We're going to be talking about, actually not quite as lively of a topic, but we're going to be talking about pet loss. As all pet owners know, that's something that we all have to go through. We all have to deal with. And if you're not a pet owner and you're a pet appreciator, we all know that we can be in different roles as support people, support family members, supportive friends, etc. And in studio today, not only do we have the wonderful women in the pet industry and who are affiliated with the Pet Connection Show, along with the Urban Dog walking and pet sitting business, is Dr. Nicole Perrault and Abby Sullivan. So good morning, ladies.
Good morning, everybody.
All right, but we also have two guests who deal with pet loss on a regular basis. We have author and animal chaplain Sid Corpy, and also a veterinarian who specializes in euthanasia, in particular at-home euthanasia. And her name is Dr. Rebecca mccomas. And I'd like to welcome both of you.
Good morning.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah, and we're grateful that you're here. This is a difficult topic. Pet appreciators, we know that. But we are definitely going to put on our brave faces and talk about a healthy way to deal with this aspect of owning pets. And Sid, why don't you start with letting us know a little bit about your animal chaplain services and then also your book.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Animal chaplaincy is a field that's really in its infancy, and there are people who define it in various ways. Some people do animal communication as part of it. I instead see myself as a bit of a grief counselor for people who have lost their pets. I help them to prepare for, work through, and move on after pet loss. And I wrote the book, Good Grief, Finding Peace After Pet Loss, after having lost several humans and animals in my life in a short period of time. And it was such a crossroads for me that I knew I had to find a way to make peace with their passing, to understand more that, like they do, that death is a transition, that they're not really gone except physically. And if you can maintain that attitude, you can find a way to get strong. You'll cry. I'd make $1 gazillion if I had a cure for, being sad after it. But just to teach people that there is a way to move through it in a very positive fashion, become stronger yourself, and really honor the memory of those animals.
Thanks, Sid. And Rebecca, could you share a little bit about your practice as well?
Sure. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me to be on the show today. I appreciate that. I'm a veterinarian here in the Twin Cities, and my practice is called Minnesota Pets. And specifically what I do is, my special interest anyway, is supporting people through the euthanasia experience with a pet, which I know is very difficult for people to go through. So I know that experience can be easier at home, where the pet is comfortable and relaxed. And so that's the only type of practice that I currently do.
That's really interesting. And, it was just recently that I heard about you through Sid. And I wish I had known about you earlier, because we just have so many clients that even though we're so busy dog walking and pet sitting and, keeping them hopefully physically in shape and mentally challenging, there isn't, a month that goes by that we don't have to say goodbye to one of our very special furry friends.
I know I hear that quite a bit from the clients that I work with, and Sid mentioned that animal chaplaincy is relatively new. I think it's also relatively knew that practices are focusing specifically on home euthanasia. Veterinarians have tried to offer that service over the years, but it's being recognized, I think, as being quite an important practice to have, because people who know that it's available just intuitively immediately understand how much better that experience can be for the pet, and I really believe for the people too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you are a vet who's practicing in a clinic and your client's pet becomes ill and it's that time, you can't just up and leave your clinic. So it's really nice to be able to have, somebody to work with who can be very sensitive to your pet's the pet's needs, and then your client, the human owner as well. But before pet owners actually have to deal with that, either through, something unexpected like a car accident or something serious, or just the gradualness of aging or a disease taking its toll, I think there's many things that we can do as pet owners before that ever happens. Like as a parent, many of us have like living wills for our children or other special important people in our lives. And I think in many ways, now I'm not advocating a living will for your pet right now, but I think in many ways, when we begin our ownership of a pet or when we welcome a pet into our lives, we can work with our veterinarians and also design some things for ourselves. So when that time comes, like a framework, when that time comes, we can be at least a little bit more prepared to go through that process. And Dr. Nicole, you shared a while ago with me, I think just over coffee, some sort of a checklist, although I don't think that's what you called it. But could you touch a little bit on that for me?
Sure. Yep. What Kathy's talking about is actually, I had learned about this in some seminar that I had attended, and basically talking about encountering clients at that very difficult time when they're trying to decide, how do I know, what would you do if it's your pet? Basically, what I think a good thing to do is when you start out with a puppy or a kitten, kind of make a little list of what you think is important to that animal. What shows that they're enjoying their quality of life? Is it the way they enjoy their food, the way they play, the hours that they sleep, things like that? And then keep that somewhere. Either you can give it to your veterinarian and we can put it in the file, or put it in your own personal file at home with your animal stuff, vaccine records and all of that. But that way, when the animal, is aging and is, 17 or whatnot, you can pull that out and remember, okay, this is what I thought was a quality of life. And if we're not seeing that, that's almost, I feel like to me, that would help me to make my decision, because we don't want to prolong their lives just for us. So I guess that's kind of helpful, I think, to some people.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not like you have to stick with that list. I mean, you made that list many years ago. And this, of course, will apply to a rescue pet as well, but at least it gives you an idea, because when you're in that decision-making process, it's painful. We all know that. It hurts, and our thinking, I don't want to say gets distorted, but is not always in the best interest of the pet. It's usually totally, not totally, but it's, we have so many emotions that cloud some of the practical decisions that need to be made. And just as human nature, we're searching desperately for
One
hope.
piece of hope, yeah.
Yeah, if only, because, when you make that decision to put your pet down, there's really no going back once the needle's in, So there's just so many emotions about it. So I think your checklist can change a little bit, but it's so important to remember the quality of life, for your pet.
Yeah.
Well, I would just second that too. And as the pet gets older, some of the deterioration that people see is very gradual. And if you don't have a list like that, you can kind of forget what the pet used to do. You come home from work and it would always steal your gloves and run around the house. Well, it's not doing that anymore. Or we used to play tennis ball out in the yard, every afternoon, but my pet doesn't have the energy for that anymore. And that really gradual decline can make it difficult for people to assess really where their pet's quality of life actually is.
Yeah. And I think too go ahead.
Oh, no.
Okay. No, I think too, listeners always know that I bring it around to the cats. Kathy knows I'm kind of the crazy cat lady, but I think looking at cats too, like we know that they're these very fastidious creatures that like to be clean, and when you see them age and they're not grooming anymore, or they just look kind of like they've given up, that's something to keep in mind too. That's why the list, like you mentioned, as they age, you can kind of change that a little bit.
Yeah, things like their dignity.
Right.
Not just what's fun for them, but what really marks a quality life in terms of how they define themselves if they have that kind of awareness. I was just going to share that Rebecca and I were chatting before the show about this kind of a thing that happens to humans and animals before they die many times, and it's rallying right before they go.
And excellent point.
And the thing that happens is, I've had it happen. I've made the appointment. I'm bringing my dog or my cat in, or I'm ready to, and suddenly they're going, no, I'm feeling much better. I'm going to run and play and eat now. Do. And then I call and cancel the appointment, of course. And then they might be okay for a day or two or whatever, and then they take a nosedive. Well, if you look at that rallying as, oh my gosh, it's a miracle cure, you're going to be doubly sad when it turns. If you go into it expecting that this can happen, but reframing, again, all of this stuff is reframing how you view it. If you can reframe it to see that rallying as a final loving gift to you that gives you a chance to remember them how they were, to have a good last memory rather than, oh, I waited until they were in the midst of a seizure to do this, and that's what I'm going to always have etched in my brain. Then you can just say, thank you for this last little gift, really live in the moment with it and enjoy it, and then be there to support them when they say, okay, that's all I've got.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, one thing I do want to point out is I've worked with dogs who've been in some pretty bad circumstances, whether they're paralyzed or can't move around. And one thing people need to consider is there is always hope for animals to get better, but we do have to be practical. And we are the ones who are making the decisions. And for a large animal to lay on the ground and not move around or something like that is not a quality of life thing. And we need to think of that always.
Exactly. The key thing here in dealing with pet loss is quality of life. And so let's keep that in mind, pet appreciators, as we go into the break, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you. Welcome back, pet appreciators. Welcome back to the Pet Connection Show. I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. Matter of fact, I do that a lot. I'm Kathy Menard, your host of the Pet Connection Show, and also the very happy and proud owner of the Urban Dog, a wonderful dog walking and pet sitting business here in the Minneapolis and St. Paul and surrounding areas here for the last 15 years. And obviously, Dr. Nicole and Abby are wonderful people affiliated with that business too. If you're just joining us, we are talking about a difficult topic today. We're talking about pet loss and the whole process that can be, or that's incorporated with that. So we are actually a gathering here in the studio, a gathering of pet appreciators, trying bravely to talk about the whole process of making a decision, recognizing signs and symptoms, to the whole grieving and then on to the healing process. But before the break, we were talking a little bit about a checklist, to keep us focused and clear when we're about ready to make that decision. But there's also something that's in Sid's book, and it's called a health directive. And it's really important, I think, for pet owners, especially if they need to travel while their pet is aging or ill. And Sid, can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, Kathy, a health directive is a list of very specific instructions that you've thought through before you leave or before you have to have your pet taken care of by someone else, so that it takes out any of the guesswork on their part about what you want done. For instance, if you say, my pet is hit by a car and is too far gone to save, or another thing is if they're in surgery for an emergency situation and they die on the table, you might say, do not resuscitate. Or you may ask for them to, if the worst happens and they pass, you may want the pet cremated and the ashes brought back, or you may want to have, if there are reasonable medical interventions to keep them comfortable until you can return, that may be another option. But you want to not burden the caregiver with that. You want to make sure that you've decided what you want ahead of time. Kind of like what we would do with our own living will. For me, it's, please don't resuscitate me.
Yeah.
Just let me go if I'm ready. And some people would like that to happen for their pets as well.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And you mentioned, I'm just going to jump in here a little bit, and you mentioned cremation, that could be definitely part of the the directive. Now, I don't want to complicate things here, pet appreciators, but cremation, there's options with that. And so I don't know if anybody has their pet journals with them. Although I have to say that there is a caller. And Rosalind, I do see you on the screen here. We're going to get to you here within 20 seconds. Okay, so thank you so much for holding. Pet appreciators, feel free to call in too. But anyways, just in terms of pet cremation, obviously, your vets will be able to assist you with that. But there's choices with that. And when you think that you're getting your ashes back, really make sure that you're getting your own pet's ashes back and not somebody else's pets or a mixture of both, because there's different types of services out there that they have. I don't know what you call them, cremation machines.
Single cremation.
Crematory.
Yeah.
Called a crematory.
Thank you.
And there's a group crematory, which is the large one. And then there's individual crematories, which are the little ones where it's just one pet at a time.
Exactly. And so your vet can give you some information about that. But I do know that there's one called, and again, we're not supposed, we don't take the stand here of endorsing anything, but this is just information only. I know that there's a service called Pet Cremation Services of Minnesota that only do this, the single cremation. So you are 100% guaranteed that it's only your pet's ashes. And that was really important to me. The first couple pets, I just assumed, my goodness, that they would be mine. But it wasn't until my third pet died that I actually realized, whoops, I think it's a mixture. Not that that's not okay, but you know what I mean. So anyways, Rosalind, thank you so much for holding, and welcome to Pet Connection Show.
Hi, Kathy. It's Rosalind. Thank you so much for taking my call. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I'm a fellow Pet PAC member along with Sid and Rebecca, and I'm a former physical therapist. So in light of that, I'd like to just make a comment prior to your break about the pets who have become immobile or for whatever reason have lost some of their mobility. There are options out there now for pets who have lost mobility in terms of specialized devices whereby they can regain their mobility. For example, the local dog who was stabbed, a canine police dog, and now he's mobile with the use of an assisted device on his rear legs. So there are options out there. Had to put that in there. And then I also wanted to commend you for what you do in terms of giving back to the community for your website, The Urban Dog. I saw that you offer a certain percentage of your proceeds to benefit pets. I myself am a pet business owner working out of my home, and I was proud to be able to create a vestment for Sid. I do custom embroidery for pet owners. I've just recently added pet memorial pillows for home decor, whereby a customer can choose a stock design and have embroidered verbiage as to their date of birth, date of death, whatever the customer might want.
Oh, wow. Those are some great ideas. And we are definitely, matter of fact, if you wanted to, I'm going to actually take you off the air, but before we do that, if you could, not hang up, and the engineer will take maybe your website's name, and at the end of the show, we're going to go over some neat ideas for memorials, and we will mention that, okay? We will mention your website so people can go to that. Is that okay? Oh, I think she's already talking to him. Okay. So, but anyways, thank you, Rosalind, for all your ideas. Thank you. Now, we talked about preparing ourselves, and I think it's so important because, taking care of a pet is constantly giving. We're constantly giving them gifts, emotionally, physically, etc. But to make that decision in what we think is the right time is the best last gift. So maybe Dr. Nicole, Dr. Rebecca, and Dr. mccomas, and Sid and Abby, can we talk a little bit about that actual decision-making process, like when you're in it?
Sure. I have one thing that happened actually this past week that is kind of fresh in my mind. But, I had a client come in with an older kitty who was failing very fast, and I felt for her because she was asking me, what would you do if this was your pet? And That's the hardest question, I feel like, because part of me thinks, okay, I would have hope to try to stabilize them, knowing that they may not make it. And, if I wasn't the vet, if I left my pet with the vet, I'd have to be at peace with knowing that they could pass when I left. So I felt for this woman because she took a very long time to make the decision, and the cats actually passed in the room. And I felt so bad because we could see that she was failing, and I had almost just wished we could have made a decision faster. But I know I've been in that position with my own pets, and you just have to think, what would my pet want, versus what we want. So that's hard, I think.
Well, and one thing I want to point out is we're one of the species that can verbalize, this hurts. I don't want to live like this. I don't like this. Right. And we've got to realize we're that voice for our pets. We know our pets better than anybody else. And we know when they're suffering, when they have, whatever. And sometimes people's goal is to hold on, but you've got to always consider quality of life and realize that you're the voice. The pet's not going to suddenly, stand up and call Dr. Rebecca or call the vet and say, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I think that's the hardest for people too, is that knowing that we can do that for each other and we can say what we want, but they can't. So we have to take their cues.
Yes, and as Abby said, we are the voice, pet appreciators. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Hey, pet appreciators, welcome back to the Pet Connection Show. And it was pointed out to me, and we had a little giggle about this over the break, that when I say, I'll see you on the other side of the break, it's a great metaphor for pet loss. So, but before we go on to the actual decision making and some of that kind of thing, the vets here want to clarify a little bit about the cremation that we talked about. So go ahead, Dr. mccomas.
Sure. It's one of the biggest questions that I get from clients every day, is a concern if they want to have an individual cremation done, that this is truly their own pet's remains. And it is. The crematories that are in town, and there's 3 main ones, they offer individual cremation. And what you get back is really... I don't want to be too graphic. I don't want to upset anyone, but it's bone tissue. That's all that remains after the cremation process. And what they do is they take those and process them into a relatively fine powder. And then that's what you get back, either in the urn or in the box or tin, however it's being returned to you. And if you have concerns about that, I would certainly encourage people to talk to their veterinarian about what service they're using and really make their wishes very clear. For many people, it's important to have their pets' cremated remains come back. And for some people, that's not at all a comfort to them. And so a group cremation is an appropriate choice. Some cities allow burial, but some cities don't allow burial of the pet. And so you have to kind of be aware of that. All jurisdictions, all cities allow burial of cremated remains. And so if you need to do that or spread those, you can check and make sure if it's in a park or a public place that it's okay. But certainly in your own property, that would be fine.
Oh, that's good to know. Just the legality, just those practical issues.
There is also, I'm not sure of the name, maybe one of you know it, but there is a place where you can actually go and actually be present for the cremation of your pet. I haven't had a lot of people interested in that, but some are. Do you remember the name
All
of that?
3 of the crematories allow an attended cremation is what it's called.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then you can be extra sure. You see the pet go into the crematory, and you see the remains come out. And so there's a lot of peace of mind in that.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I wanted to touch on as well is just the grieving process. I think the grieving process can begin before we ever say goodbye to our pets. Just that realization that happens. I know with some of my clients, as they're aging, sometimes when I go to walk them, there's just that aura, that feeling that this is the last time I'm going to see you. And I don't know why, but the majority of time I've been accidentally right for whatever reason. And I'm always so grateful that I had a chance to say goodbye at that time. But there are definite stages of grief, and it's not any different than when dealing with a human. And Sid, you touched beautifully on that in your book. Could you touch on it now?
Yes, what you were talking about, I think, is one of the toughest things. I term it preemptive grieving, and it's the stuff we go through when watching any pet age. I know that it's like human beings don't live in the moment. they see their animal aging and they instantly hit the fast forward button and they race themselves emotionally to the end of the story instead of appreciating every moment in between. And so I try to encourage people to reel that back and realize that we're not being a friend to ourselves by torturing ourselves that way. And, we do have all the, the denial, the bargaining, anger, and acceptance and so forth that you do with any kind of loss, not even just death, but we go through different stages, different order, and so forth. But I encourage people, if you live in the moment and really, really, really attend to your pets in a loving way, you will get past a lot of the more painful things. If you are in denial that your pet is ill, you're going to wind up on the other side so tortured with grief and guilt because you didn't take care of something you refuse to see. Or conversely, you're in denial that they're dying and you throw money at them and you put them through chemo and surgeries and anything that is medically possible. And I think these very responsible vets understand that just because we can prolong a life doesn't mean we should prolong a life. And just one thing that kind of shoots off of that, but it kind of deals with the guilt and what Abby was saying about really attending to your pet. A little bit of what you have to do is cut yourself slack if you don't recognize an illness or ailment, because in the wild, these animals are instinctively going to mask pain and infirmity, because if they were out there, another predator would take care of them right away. And there are people who say, well, I don't want to play God. I want things to go, let nature take its course. Well, nature isn't Disney. Mm-hmm. Nature is often really, really cruel, and you may be seeing them suffer unnecessarily. Every time I've had a pet put to sleep, the words that come out of my mouth right after that is, please let me go that way. Mm-hmm. It is so peaceful. Just, head goes down, they go to sleep, and they're gone. Then you can start to heal. The hardest part is coming up to that point and that decision to actually see them go so gently, so quietly, so peacefully, with you pouring love on them, is a tremendous gift.
One thing I do want to say is if you're in a position and your vet is telling you, this is really above and beyond for this animal, sometimes it's really hard to take a step back, but I think people do need to take a step back and go, well, if my vet is telling me this, who obviously cares for my animal and has cared for my animal for a long time, and he or she is telling me this is too much for it, I urge people just to take a step back, as painful as it is, and really, really think about it. Don't do the automatic, almost human thing of, well, I'm right. Mm-hmm. Just try and listen.
Yeah, and you touched on the guilt beforehand, guilt afterwards. To me, the word regret, a couple of times that I've had to put my pets down, there's that immediate regret in the first 24 to 48 hours. Or, well, actually right afterwards, but sometimes it lasts a few days of, oh gosh, I wish I could have, seen those signs and symptoms and read them differently. Like with my Emmy, oh my gosh, that was so hard. She was getting older, yeah, and she was breathing a little bit harder, yeah, and so she was walking a little bit slower on her walks, yeah, so she was aging. Well, then one night the breathing just was so difficult, and I thought, I bet she's got a little lung infection or something. You know what I mean? Like, whatever, And I just took her to the emergency vet thinking I'd walk out, half hour later, with some medication, and then we would, get home by 2 a.m. and be tired and crabby the next day, but that's it. Well, within 5 minutes after getting the x-ray, he said, she's too far gone. But it's just like, no, Emmy's standing there. She's looking at me. Yeah, she's breathing a little bit heavy, but no, she's so alive. And what do you mean I have to say goodbye in 5 minutes? What are you talking about? And, cha-cha, I hope I don't cry. But anyways, it's that feeling of like regret. Like, oh, doggone it. How come I misread those symptoms? Doggone it. And then, but then it's like you have to be strong. You got to be there for your pet, just like you do for your kid, And I just remember, trying my best to pull myself together and hug her and hold her without hoocha. But anyways.
Mm-hmm. Can I jump in for
absolutely.
a moment? Your experience was a tough one. I'm sorry to hear about that. I think veterinarians are starting to recognize more and more that when we can give you space and time to get used to the idea a little bit, even if it's only one day, even if it's just taking your pet home overnight and thinking it over, unless it's a really, really dire emergency, oftentimes that's very possible. And I would encourage your listeners to ask their veterinarian, would it be so bad if I took my pet home and gave you a call tomorrow? Is this something that we need to do right now? Or can I wait for a day or two over the weekend? Often the answer is yes, you certainly could. Sometimes the answer will be no.
And that's what it was with Emmy,
Yeah.
but it's just the fact that she was, I don't want to say so alive, because if you go back to the quality checklist that you guys talked about, no, she wasn't as like active and, all that kind of stuff. But he really didn't think, it was just very clear after a while that she was just putting on a very, very brave front. And that she would probably, her lungs were so filled, it was a congestive heart failure, her lungs were so filled that there was almost no air left to even suck in, and she would have died either on the way home or whatever. So then it was one of those things, like Abby said, you got to step back. What is the quality of my pet's last 24 hours on Earth? And so for me, it meant saying goodbye.
And I don't want to be preachy about the stepping back. I've just seen certain situations illustrated that were really hard on not only the pet and the owner, but the members of the family. I mean, I've seen those situations, and I understand people love their pets. I would bawl if I had to put my cats down. I mean, I really would. It would kill me. But if their quality of life was suffering, and even my vet was telling me, and people shouldn't be hard on themselves if they don't recognize symptoms. Not everybody's trained as a vet. And granted, I'm just speaking from my personal experience with my grandfather being a vet. But when it came to your own personal animals, you don't always think like a vet. You think like, even if you are one. So people shouldn't be hard on themselves that, like Kathy, you thought that was aging instead of congestive heart failure. Well, you have no training to tell you, one way or another. So that's another thing people should realize, is they shouldn't be really hard on themselves if they don't.
Well, and also some of those signs, especially with congestive heart failure, are very subtle. Sometimes you wouldn't notice that unless you take like a chest x-ray like every 6 months to screen her and things like that. So, I don't think at all that you should beat yourself up.
No, it was just so sad. And you think about, summer's coming, and I've got all these plans for Emmy and Elsie and Guinness, and we're going to do this, and I'm going to do this for them, and blah, 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 blah. And I can hardly wait till they step on the grass again and out of the mud and snow. And it's like, whoops, none of that's going to happen. But I tell you, the spirit, even though they're gone, I still feel Emmy was always my shadow. She still is my shadow. So, but anyways.
Neat. That's neat.
So, okay. So we talked about the stages of grieving. We talked about helping owners make that decision. What do you guys feel that people really need from family and friends after that process has already happened, or during that process? What's the best way we can be supportive?
It's easy to tell the people who are friends and family what to do. The main thing to tell the person who is grieving is stay away from people you obviously know are not animal folks. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones you're going to get, what are you still crying about? It's a dog. Go get another. If you can keep yourself out of those situations, you'll be helping yourself a lot. We were talking before the show, and Rebecca was saying she gets a lot of calls on Fridays because people have decided they're taking the day off work and they want the weekend to feel better. And that's a fantastic idea, to work in some self-care. But coming from the outside in, if you're a friend of somebody, first of all, listen. Just keep your ears open for as long as it takes. People get what's called compassion fatigue, and they go, okay, well, I listened to you cry about your pet yesterday. Aren't you done? Or whatever. You may be 2 weeks down the line. It may be a month down the line, and your friend just bursts into tears. Listen without judgment, and give them good distractions, healthy distractions, going on walks, helping them weed in the garden, doing their grocery shopping for them. Take care of the little things that they aren't in a position to think of when you say, is there anything I can do? Well, don't make them think of it. Just do it preemptively for them.
One thing too, real quick, I know we're coming up on a break. I'll have to touch on it when we get back.
There's the teaser. See you on the other side.
Thank you.
All right, pet appreciators. Moving a little beyond grieving here and moving into the healing process. Nicole mentioned some of the positive things, or was thinking about some of the positive things that we can do for people who have lost their pets.
Yep, and I, in helping a lot of my friends and close relatives overcome the loss of their pets, what I've tried to do, because I know that it helps just from experience, is try to make them laugh about some silly thing that their pet did, whether it, went outside and chewed up things. I mean, that will make them laugh. I mean, that's, I think, one thing to focus on, and that's what I try to do, because there's only so many times that you can say, I'm so sorry, I wish there was something more we could do. So I think bringing it into the next step of, try to get them laughing and remembering, because that is, I think, a warming feeling to them. Like, I know for my own pets and stuff that have passed, that thinking about something silly that they did just makes you happy, and that kind of keeps the memory alive. So,
sorry.
I was just going to say, too, that you're validating. You're saying your pet was very important to you. So let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was going to say, we had a house fire. My parents' house burned down. There were 3 of our animals inside, and one of them was my dog. And we remembered her by, the little story. She was an abused dog before we got her, and had her for a long time. But Annie used to talk. She'd do the and we'd talk about that, and she loved going for rides. I still have her choke collar in my car to this day. So little things like that, help you remember and smile.
Yep.
Sharing stories is the most healing thing you can do. I remember just in high school, I had lost my dog I'd grown up with, Pinky. And the boy I was dating at the time, Troy, hi. You don't expect sensitivity from a teenage boy.
No.
And he didn't have pets himself, but all he told me was, Pinky was a good dog. That was enough.
Mm-hmm.
Just letting, cha-cha, as you say. Just letting people know that your pet even touched their lives in a positive way. And when I was writing my book, I invited people. I got stories from all over the world about how important that animal and human bond is. And it's incredibly important to share that. That's why there are thriving pet loss sites like chancesspot.org, where you can go and share your story with people who understand and will not ridicule you and say you're somehow defective because you really loved your pet, with whom you had 24/7 contact, no fights, unconditional love, and they're part of every routine you have going in your day. How can anyone say that's not a loss when that's ripped from you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's one of the beautiful things about my job, is that when I get to go to someone's home and spend that last hour or two with them and their pet, I get to hear the stories, and they always come out, and almost always come out. And the mood in the room and the atmosphere completely changes when that occurs. It's a very healing process. The healing even begins right at the time of euthanasia, when people can visit those stories and tell those stories and have supportive friends and family members there at that moment. It isn't as tragic as it is, maybe when you're on your own and don't have that support. So I always encourage people to invite others to come and be a part of that experience. And there's nothing icky and awful about it. It's really quite peaceful and very beautiful in some sense.
I think it helps some people to see the process and see that it really is an easy process. The animal's not in pain, and this is the best thing that you can do for them at that point.
I was amazed when I started my animal chaplaincy that I, the biggest wuss biscuit on this planet, would voluntarily accompany people to their pets' euthanasia. I never thought I could do that. And I bawl right along with them, even if I didn't know the pet. But it's not, for me, it's not just because it's sad for them and I'm empathic and feeling their pain. It is just like Rebecca said, it's very beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it's just so profound that it chokes you up.
Well, and I've got to say, I agree with you, Sid. If I go, that's the way I want to go. It's just, it's quick, it's painless, and you can almost feel the animal just breathing a sigh of relief.
Yep.
Honestly.
And they're so much more accepting of the stages of life. They're just so much more accepting. I remember when Quincy passed away, he went off to a little corner. He never, ever went into a little corner, but just, when his cancer got too bad, he just went off into a little corner, and I told myself, okay, this is it. This is it, because that's what they would do in the wild. They would go off to a quiet little place to pass. And I find that, for me, music does everything for me. Heal, heal, heal. But music and art and poetry, photographs, all that kind of stuff can be ways to memorialize our pets and keep them with us. And I'm fairly spiritual, not religious, but I'm fairly spiritual. And I'm just so grateful to be able to be, I don't know, to feel sometimes. And I know this is a personal thing. I don't expect everybody to feel this way, but just to feel their presence. And I just wanted to say that, dioramas, do you ever remember making those in school? That's something that I have found to be really helpful, because you can bring all aspects, use all types of materials, and just keep a special little...
Well, I think the idea about memorials is this giving ourselves permission to remember. That you don't have to get rid of the leash and the collar or the food bowl or the blanket. You can keep those items. And if they bring comfort to you, keep them close. The pet's paw print that we make at the time of euthanasia, if you have the pet's cremated remains, keep those things in view. Keep them where you can talk to your pet. It's giving yourself permission, I think.
Yeah. Well, and it never, like I said, I've still got Annie's choke collar. I don't use it. I've never used it on another animal since. But I've always had it with me. It's always in my car. And I'm in my car for a good part of my day every day.
Yep, that's part of dog walking.
So, I get to see that every day. And that was 8 years ago now. But I still get to remember her every day.
And yet you're not holding on to it in a kind of a unhealthy manner. There's a line between that. You will have people who get stuck in their grief, in which case, if you are still feeling just torn to bits 2 weeks in, that may be a sign of clinical depression, and you may want to really seek out a professional's help. But I still have a picture of my Westie Mortimer, and I have it facing me every time I walk through my parlor section of my house. I wave at him and say, "Hello, my angel." And I'm not stuck in grief, but I will always remember.
Yeah, you have that little memento to remember by. It doesn't make you sad or anything like that. It's just, you think of the good times and smile.
Yeah, and then our journeys are still together, but just in a different way.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not necessarily, physical or whatever. So any other ideas you guys might have to share with...
In the last minute?
Yeah. Concrete, any unique memorials that you've come across or anything like that?
People do some really nice things with gardens. They set up a memorial garden, doing artwork, writing songs, writing stories, poetry, drawing caricatures, any of these kinds of things. I think the creative process that comes out of us is another sort of healing balm.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So, pet appreciators, we can't thank you enough for gathering with us today around the radio, wherever you are, in your car, and, just talking about things that, talking about the best last gift we can give to the animals that we share our lives with. We really care about you, pet appreciators. We really care about your pets, the ones that are here and the ones that have passed on. We wish everyone a wonderful week. Thank you.